When people say the Maya civilization suddenly disappeared, they are telling a story that is dramatic but incomplete. The truth is more complicated and far more interesting. What disappeared was not the Maya people, and not even Maya culture itself. What collapsed was a specific historical system. The classic Maya world of powerful city-states, royal dynasties, monumental inscriptions, and regional political networks in the southern lowlands. That collapse unfolded unevenly over generations and in different ways from one region to another. The Maya still live today across Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and beyond. To understand what happened, we first have to understand what the Maya were. The Maya were never one single empire ruled from one capital. They were a network of cities, kingdoms, alliances, and rival powers. Their classic period lasted roughly from 250 CE to about 900 CE, and at its height the civilization included dozens of cities, each with its own ruler, temples, plazas, and political ambitions. The Maya developed agriculture based on maize, beans, and squash, and they also used irrigation and terracing. They built stone cities, created hieroglyphic writing, and developed highly sophisticated calendars and astronomical systems. In other words, this was not a fragile or primitive society. It was one of the most advanced civilizations in the ancient Americas. The word collapse does not mean the same thing as extinction. In archaeology, it often means that a political order breaks down, cities empty out, ruling families lose power, and the old institutions stop working. That is what happened in many parts of the southern Maya lowlands during the late Classic and Terminal Classic periods. Some cities declined rapidly, others more slowly, and some regions continued to flourish. The great lowland centers of Guatemala and surrounding areas depopulated, while places in the Yucatan Peninsula continued to grow for centuries afterward. So the real story is not the Maya vanished. It is that the political geography of the Maya world changed dramatically. One of the strongest explanations for the collapse is climate stress, especially drought. Multiple studies point to repeated drought episodes during the period when classic Maya political centers were weakening. A 2015 PNAS study linked drought, agricultural adaptation, and socio-political change in the lowlands, while a 2023 Nature study found that declining predictability of rainfall would have had profound impacts on agriculture and geopolitical stability. The crops the Maya depended on, especially maize, beans, squash, and tree crops, were highly vulnerable to drought. In a system where rainfall timing mattered so much, even a few years of failed wet seasons could become a crisis. What made drought so dangerous was not just a lack of rain itself, but how tightly Maya society depended on seasonal water patterns. The 2023 study emphasizes that changes in the timing and reliability of rainfall could destabilize crop production, especially in societies with large populations, social inequality, and a need to support many non-producers in cities and royal courts. The Maya were skilled water managers, but reservoirs and cisterns still had limits. When rainy seasons became less predictable, farming became riskier, food surpluses became harder to maintain, and political legitimacy became harder to protect. In a civilization built on surplus, sacred kingship, and city-centered power, water stress could become state stress very quickly. Climate alone, though, does not explain everything. The classic Maya collapse also involved war, rivalry, and political fragmentation. Maya kingdoms competed constantly for land, labor, trade routes, tribute, and prestige. The 2022 Nature Communications study on Mayapan found that prolonged drought escalated rival factional tensions, and that civil conflict rose significantly in connection with drought conditions. Even though that study focuses on a later post-classic capital, it reinforces a broader pattern. When resources became scarce, political disputes became sharper, not softer. In the classic era, this likely meant more warfare, more shifting alliances, and more instability among competing dynasties. That matters because the Maya world was built on royal authority. Kings were not just administrators. They were sacred figures who performed rituals, commissioned monuments, and tied the fate of the city to the cosmos. When drought, war, and economic pressure made rulers look weak, the entire ideological system weakened with them. Archaeologists have found that in many places, the carving of dated monuments stopped, dynasties ended, and public construction slowed or ceased. That does not prove a single cause. It does show that the political machinery of the lowland cities was coming apart. The collapse was not a magical disappearance. It was a breakdown of institutions that had taken centuries to build. Environmental stress may also have amplified the droughts. NASA has summarized research suggesting that Maya land use decisions, especially extensive deforestation, could have made local conditions warmer and drier during the rainy season. In that model, clearing forests reduced moisture recycling and changed how much heat the land absorbed, which in turn could have deepened drought conditions. This does not mean the Maya destroyed themselves in a simplistic sense. It means they were managing a densely populated landscape, and some of their own land use choices may have made the system less resilient when climate shocks arrived. This is where the old idea of a single, sudden collapse breaks down. The 2012 PNAS study describes classic Maya collapse as a variable, complex phenomenon that produced a mosaic of local responses, transitions, and transformations across the lowlands. That phrase is important. It means there was no universal day when everything ended. Some communities abandoned their cities. Others shifted toward new centers. Some areas reorganized their economies. In other words, collapse was regional, uneven, and adaptive. The Maya world did not simply fall off a cliff. It fragmented, restructured, and in some places recovered. The geography of the collapse also matters. Not every Maya region suffered in the same way. Britannica notes that after about 900 CE, cities in the Yucatan Peninsula continued to flourish for centuries, even after many great lowland cities in Guatemala had become depopulated. That means the collapse was not the end of Maya civilization as a whole, but the end of one political configuration. Later centers such as Chichen Itza and Mayapan show that Maya political life continued, adapted, and in some cases revived under new conditions. And that is the deeper answer to the question, why did the Maya disappear? They did not disappear. Their rulers, cities, and inscriptions changed. Their political centers moved. Their populations shifted. Their economies reorganized. But the people themselves remained. Britannica notes that Maya people still live in the same region today, and that in the early 21st century, more than 5 million people spoke Mayan languages. National Geographic likewise emphasizes that the classic Maya never truly collapsed and disappeared in the sense people often imagine. The civilization changed form, but it did not end in the way the popular myth suggests. So what actually caused the collapse? The most accurate answer is not one cause, but a chain reaction. Repeated droughts strained agriculture. Unpredictable rainfall made food production more fragile. Environmental pressures may have worsened local dryness in some areas. Political rivalries intensified as resources tightened. Warfare increased. Rulers lost legitimacy. Trade networks and alliances weakened. Cities that depended on surplus, tribute, and stability could no longer function the way they once had. It was a system's failure, not a mystery disappearance. The most important lesson from the Maya collapse is not that a civilization can vanish overnight. It is that even brilliant societies can become vulnerable when climate, politics, and resources all turn against them at the same time. The Maya built a world of extraordinary knowledge, mathematics, art, and architecture. That world did not simply die. It transformed, endured, and survived in the descendants of the Maya people who are still here today. The temples fell silent. The people did not.